Welcome to the Don't Die Rusty podcast. I'm Rick Hanson, and we will be talking about living, not dying. We're all in this adventure together, and we will be interviewing people who inspire us to live our best lives. People with various backgrounds who will walk us down the trails they took to not die rusty. Adventure in life are many things to many people. It could be a sprint or an endurance race, but with each adventure, we become a better version of us. We hope you keep chasing those dreams, being the best you, and of course, don't die rusty. Hello, Don't Die Rusty Nation. This is Rick Hanson again, and we are having another fun and enjoyable episode of the Don't Die Rusty podcast. And today I have a guest that has been a follower of ours on social media and other parts, and I just wanted to chat with him because he's done the Don't Die Rusty thing by just deciding that he's going to move his family, and they moved to Cody, Wyoming, and it's just a kind of a cool story.
Sure.
So I'm going to introduce Matthew Fry, and he is going to tell a little bit about himself, and we're going to have the conversation. So here you go, Matthew. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 40, almost 43 years old. I'm married, have two kids, 9-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl. Born and raised in Minnesota, lived there for most of my life until just a few years ago. Like a lot of people, we'll just say we were a little tired of the way the world was going in 2020. And, well, back up a little bit. I've been in the gun industry for about 25 years, give or take a little. Since starting college, I started selling guns at Gander Mountain. I worked for them for several years, bounced around. Every time I tried to find a career somewhere else, I ended up back in sporting goods and guns and stuff like that. So about 12, 13 years ago, I went to gunsmithing school, got my degree there, became a gunsmith, still worked other side jobs as well. So I had my own shop, both at my house in North Branch, Minnesota, for about 12 years. I worked for a lot of other smaller shops around. I kind of did the contractor gunsmith thing for a few years and worked at a sporting goods shop in the day. And then I'd work my own shop at night a lot. My wife was never a big fan of our house. We'll just say she wanted to do the house jump thing and move to a different one. And I resisted because, I was established. My shop was there. It was, I hate moving. So in 2020, we were late 2020, early 2021. She was on another one of her quests to get me to try to move. And out of frustration, I just said, fine, I'll move, but let's try somewhere other than Minnesota. Minnesota's not the most gun-friendly state and not the most business-friendly state. So I said, off the cuff one day, I said, fine, let's leave Minnesota. And she's like, well, where? And so we briefly looked at a couple other places, but I realized there's a lot of gun companies that have moved west, and mostly for political and business reasons too. So I threw it out there. What about Wyoming or Montana or someplace out west? And she surprisingly bid on it and said, sure, let's go for it. So before she had a chance to change her mind, we started to look at it and took some road trips and did some research and ended up settling on, we were going back and forth between either Sheridan, Wyoming or Cody, and a couple interviews, emails, and phone calls. And I had a job waiting in Cody for better than was offered in Sheridan. So we packed up and moved at the end of, my wife's a teacher, so we packed up and moved at the end of that school year and came out to Cody in June of 2022 and been here ever since. And everybody loves it. So that's the long story short on how we got here. So, and we said we love it here. We love the outdoors. I didn't realize just how much I would love the mountains and the big wide open spaces out here as much as I do.
Well, I have to admit, you live in one of our favorite towns in Wyoming. I think I've told you this when we were talking a little bit before, but my wife and I drive over to Cody at least for sure one time in the winter and a couple times in the summer, just because we love. It's something about going over the big horns and then ended up in Cody and going up the North and South Fork, maybe get into Yellowstone if it's the summer. But I love taking pictures of the sheep over there in the North and the South Fork, and it's one of those towns that just have a piece of my heart. You know, you could go up to Sunlight and go down. I mean, you have so many beautiful views that you can go to in those areas, and then you have other outdoor activities too. You
Right.
know, and I'll tell you a story. We were out there on the 4th of July. Well, it was. I can't remember when it was, but that spring is when we heard the tourists picked up baby buffalo bison
Just a
and put it
couple
in the
years
back of the
ago.
car.
Yeah, that was big
And
news here.
we happened to be out. Yeah, and we were there for the 4th of July parade. And they made it funny. You know, it was just one of those funny deals they put in the parade.
Right.
And it's funny because I was getting ready for a hunt, and you can see this in South Dakota probably too. But I was getting ready for a hunt, and we stayed in what is it? It's a campground right along by Dairy Queen. I can't even think of it right off the top of my head.
Oh, the
But anyway,
Ponderosa there.
Ponderosa.
Yep.
And I got up and went for a run that morning before the parade started. And I'm running back, and here's a guy that was in the parade he had an AR, and he's walking down the street, and you just don't see those things in a lot of places. But it's just a fun town, and it's real, and it's the real people.
Yeah,
I love it there.
That's one thing that, a lot of this was, the whole choice to move was kind of a big chance to take. And when we were kind of going back and forth on it, we hadn't committed to anything yet. We were talking about the move. I remember listening to a different podcast on my way to work. I listen to lots of podcasts. My job allows me to a lot of time where my hands are working, but my brain is able to do other things too. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I was driving to work, and I honestly don't even remember exactly what the subject matter was, but the host was talking, and he said something about taking chances, and because he had tried a cross country move, and he's like, in his decision making process on it, he said, ask yourself what's the worst that could happen, and in his case, he was going to Maine, and he's like, well, I could end up cold for a few years. and honestly, I went back and looked it up, and his move wasn't a rounding success. He ended up back, in the location that he had started. But that got me thinking that, I could try this, and what's the worst that could happen? You find out you don't like the town, you don't like the people, you try something else. But ours, it wasn't 100% smooth. I mean, the house we got when we first moved here didn't turn out to be the house that we needed to stay at, so we had to move. But those things kind of are small problems in the grand scheme. I mean, you have problems with life no matter where you're at. Nothing is ever perfect, but as a whole, I can say that the move has been a huge success. My wife and kids are all very, very happy with where we're at now, and just how beautiful everything is out here. And it is a town full of real people. It's not a huge town, but a lot of people come through in the summer. But it's it's full of a lot of people. I would say the vast majority of people here didn't grow up here, start out here. They're here because they want to be here, and that leads to just a kind of a happier, more content group of people. People aren't in a huge hurry most of the time. They're not. They're very polite. They're very happy. It just seems like you're on vacation all the time almost. Everybody seems to be pretty nice, genuine, and friendly, and we've made a lot of good friends here just in the few years we've been here, and it's going very well. We like it.
Well, and that's cool in the aspect that you can find that place that you will, I mean, that you can call home, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up in central South Dakota, and it's still home in the aspect that that's where you go visit my dad and
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Right.
But when I come back and I see the Black Hills, I'm coming on Highway 34. I don't know if you've been on it, but
Mm-hmm.
once you start seeing the Black Hills, start seeing Bear Butte, and I feel home there.
Right.
There's that sense of peace
Mm-hmm.
that comes over, and I don't know if you feel that, but it's interesting when you drive and you see the places that really make you feel at peace, and then you really know that you're home.
Yep. Oh, it became home very quickly. Even our first summer here, I did the year we moved. I did 7 trips back and forth to Minnesota for various reasons. I was a little traveled out after that. Um, I drove I-94 in North Dakota more times in that year than I really care to ever again. But uh, it it quickly I realized that home in Minnesota is very family as you get that, but this has become home. You feel I did my last trip of having to move stuff last June. I had some big equipment that had to come out here, and yes, I was never so happy to get back to Wyoming and cross back in. It's dear, everything around you is so beautiful and peaceful. Last summer, my wife decided, and hey, I support this too, that we need to do more stuff as a family. We're in a place where we're a short drive from so much stuff that people will save the entire year to go on vacation to come to the place that's really in our backyard. And we have so much stuff that we can go see within an hour or two. So once a week in the summertime, because she's a teacher, the kids are off, and I work 4-day weeks, so I have 3-day weekends, and we try to go on some sort of adventure as a family. We go, be it on a drive to see something we haven't seen before. Hikes, we do a lot of hikes as a family. I do it all year round, but the girls aren't as keen on getting out in the wintertime as my son and I are. So but we still try to
Yep.
get out and see stuff on a regular basis. Just it's good for one's mental health and just to appreciate the beauty of everything's around us. It's I could start throwing out location names, but you've been to some of them, I'm sure. But we've been here almost 3 years now, and I can't even say I've hardly scratched the surface on seeing everything out here.
No, and it's funny that you say that because yesterday my wife and I said, there was a couple things we wanted to do, and in a few of the places we wanted to go, it was going to be 30, 40 mile an hour winds,
Mm-hmm.
and we said, well, you know what? Let's just go to Custer State Park, maybe see a sheep. Got to see some sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you always see buffalo, and we actually went and looked at Jewel Cave looking for some elk. Found some elk, and we had lunch, and we were talking, and we said, you know what? There's still a lot of time in the day. Let's go to the Badlands. And I always love going to the Badlands to try to find some sheep, but
Mm-hmm.
never found any. Yesterday, we were chasing some sunsets, but you know, I understand that stuff because I've lived in Spearfish now. I hate to date myself, but we're getting close to 25, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that have never really experienced the hills that grew up here.
Right.
I mean, they scratch the surface, but they don't go any further.
Mm-hmm.
I've climbed Crow Peak in Spearfish here more times than a lot of people, and some people that have lived here have never ever climbed it once. And here's the other interesting thing: just moving there, Cindy comes out to the hills. We find things to do. There's little things to do that you would have never thought of, and that's what you're getting into. Is what it sounds like. You
Mm-hmm.
go for a hike here or there, or just get to experience those things that first of all, I think it's fun because growing up in the plains, we'll just say in Minnesota, you never got to experience the mountain stuff, and now it's just new and and exciting, and you get to learn too.
Right. No, I totally agree. Until just a few years ago, I had never traveled west of the Missouri other than by plane. And, it was for business conference out, I hadn't
Yeah.
really been in the mountains, so to speak. And I was
Yeah.
kind of like a child on that trip. Everything was new, everything was exciting. And, so to have gotten the opportunity to move out here was, you know, like a giant Christmas present. And then to be here and have things work out, be able to stay here. I work for Cody's one of the most gun friendly towns in America. I'm pretty sure. There's at least half a dozen gun manufacturers right here, and the job that I interviewed for over the phone, never had met the owner, just talked to him a couple times. The job's worked out very well. My wife obviously has been a teacher for pushing 20 years now. She changed teaching positions, from a normal classroom to more of a one-on-one scenario with her new job, and she's loved it.
Mhm.
And just to see somebody that wasn't an outdoors person when I met her and wasn't an outdoors person for the majority of the time we've been married, just seeing her suddenly excited to be outdoors. She made me go buy a camper last summer because she's like, well, we can only go so far if we're doing this all on a day, but if we go and have camper, we can go stay there. And so and my kids are at an age where they're still they still like to be around us. They're still having fun at things. So I thought, we wanted to capitalize on that. In some of our earlier discussions, I mentioned that your kids aren't going to remember necessarily, unless you're, phenomenally wealthy, which most of us aren't. They're not going to remember how much money you have,
Yeah.
but they're going to remember the things you took them to go do and the things you took them to see. And, this is almost like a way to be almost permanently on vacation. I know my parents have kind of mentioned that a few times when they're out here and when they talk to you, they're like, "Do you ever have a boring weekend?" And yeah, we do. There's times when you don't get out, due to weather or other obligations. Kids are involved in stuff. Kids are busy, but we try. We make a better effort to try than we did when we were just kind of in a place where we had been for so many years. You almost feel like you'd seen everything in Minnesota, even though I probably hadn't. But there's Minnesota's very privately owned. There's not very many big open spaces
Mhm.
where you can just say, "I want to go hike here today because it's here." You got to go find permission, and it's all a lot smaller. It seems like, and here I can go hiking and get lost for potentially ever if I make the wrong turn. So, and it's kind of cliche, but pictures don't do it justice. It's huge, and you take a picture to send it to somebody, and then they say, "Wow, that's really pretty," but it doesn't. The picture does not capture how huge it is, and
Mhm.
it really doesn't. You have to see it in order to really experience it, as you know. So,
It's really funny because the one thing I wanted to say is when you're talking about the kids and the experiences that you're having, and I put it out there. I can't remember when I put it out there a long time ago because I had some friends that I wanted to point out, and it was more of a working situation of that you 90% of the time that you get to spend with your kids in your lifetime, I read, was before the age of 15.
mm-hmm.
Because once they get to 15, usually they got their friends, and now they're thinking about slowly spreading their wings. And 90% of that time, and you get to enjoy that time with your kids, experiencing these adventures where they can go back and say, "I remember when Dad and I did this, and or Dad and Mom and I did this. That this was a great adventure." And I think what you're getting at is, and I don't know if this is where it's going, but and because I know it would be with me as a kid, but and I put a post out the other day, you can't relive the moments that you can't go back and relive that moment and that feeling that you had, but you know what? I can. I can go back and say, do you remember, and take kids or whoever else. I don't have kids, but I go to take these people to these places that my dad and my mom or wherever took me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I enjoyed it. Now, if they enjoy it, then you just keep on sharing these things where it's important to see. I'm not saying I want everybody to go to my hunting spots or
No,
anything like
right.
that, but I'm just saying, but you get to enjoy the other experiences of life and adventure that you experience. So sometimes you get to experience it twice, or sometimes you get to experience it through the eyes of others.
Right.
And you're getting to do that now in Wyoming and showing your kids these adventures, and who knows what's going to happen 25 years down the road.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're experiencing the first time adventures together a lot, which is really cool.
Yeah.
My wife said last summer, she's like, "Now we need to go see and do more." We're so our family and sometimes a couple other families. She knows all the teachers, obviously. So,
Yep.
we'll get out and just pick a hiking trail. We'd never been on it before. And let's go explore this one today. And, we'll set a goal. I want to make it this far. And sometimes that's a little ambitious because, elevation is a thing. But,
It is a thing.
it's experiences you're going to remember. It's things that you see that are in your, memory forever. And then obviously living in a place that a lot of people like to go on vacation, we have a fair amount of visitors that come through town, and we get to go take them to the places that we've seen and discovered and show them an experience different. I mean, the first time I went through Yellowstone, I'm almost embarrassed to say how fast it was because I had point A and point B on my map for that day, and that was what I had to do. So I had the hotel booked in the next town over. But to be able to go into a park like that time after time after time and see different stuff just about every time, but also at the same time, like my kids will, one of their favorite things to do in the park is to just play at the shore of Yellowstone Lake. They'll sit and throw rocks there for hours if we would let them. And you can get into a rush. Or I noticed it again this weekend. I took my son to a father-son camp over by the Bighorns for a night, and I'm always wanting to go see more. I'm push, 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 push. Let's keep going. We have this goal to make, and I want to see this stuff today. The kids just sometimes like to sit and play in nature, and I'm totally encourage that. Not many kids are going to be able to say their parents took them to some of the places that we take them on a regular basis. I'm lucky, and I get it. It's important to remember how lucky you are to be able to impart some of those experiences to your kids and to watch them just enjoy nature and play. Every kid loves computer screens, it seems like today, but to be able to put that down and say, no, that what you're looking at out in nature and out in reality is far better than you're going to ever see through a screen. And engaging your brain with the beauty of everything around you, it's become normal, but yet not all at the same time. Like I get that I can go and drive and see more species of animals in an hour than most people can all year long. So where they all go during hunting season, I still haven't quite figured that out yet. So they're real good at disappearing, but it's still
Yeah.
some people save their entire lives to go on one Western hunting trip. And that was part of the thing that spurred me to do it in the first place. Was I wanted to go do all that stuff, but I probably was never going to have the finances to go and hunt everything I wanted to. Well, one way around that is to just become a resident of the state you want to go hunt. So I get to go and hunt on a random Tuesday what some guy probably had saved 10 years to go do. And I gotta remember that, how lucky I am to see some of the things that I do when I'm out looking around. So
Exactly, because I take that for granted too, because you get some people that I hunt with, that I invite hunting or whatever, and we see things like, because you never know what kind of day it's going to be. Some in the fall, especially, like some of those days, if you're on top of the mountain and the sun is shining, but below you is fog
Mm-hmm.
and it hasn't lifted, and you get to see these, like, it feels like you could go walk across those fluffy clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, we take it for granted a little bit. I've been seeing rainbows below me, and and those are the cool things that some people never get to see. And it's interesting that you say that about having to save up and go on these trips and stuff, because that's what my wife and I were talking about too. We used to think that, even, I mean, we only lived 4 hours away from the Black Hills, but or roughly, in central South Dakota. She lived in Pierre at one. I lived in Rehites, but it was a it was a trip to go to these places.
Right.
And now, and for me now, it's like I'm a skip to Utah, a hop to Montana,
Mm-hmm.
just to jump over to Wyoming. We're only 11 miles from Wyoming where I live, and it's like, you know what? Let's just go.
Right.
We went to Buffalo last week. And like I said, we'll go to Cody. We go to Red Lodge and go over to over the mountains there, just to see the beauty in the summer too. And when you start realizing that it's only a long drive and the adventure is worth it, that's when life starts taking a very sharp turn, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't settled in. You aren't just content, we'll just say.
Right.
Now I want to go see a lot more things.
Exactly.
And when you get that to those points, I'm saying.
Yeah. After
So,
we got that initial hurdle of the 2,200-mile road trip we took in 2021, now my kids are good travelers. Now, yeah, there's still a maximum. They're not 12-hour in a car people anymore. We've done it, but we usually that's a rough day. But you
yeah.
we are so close to everything. I mean, once again, we'll go up, visit Red Lodge's Christmas parade on a whim, because it's an hour and a half or less than an hour and a half away,
Yep.
and we'll
Yep.
go over. We wanted to go through Ten Sleep for Christmas I have family in the Black Hills, a little south of you, but we wanted to go.
Yep.
The snow decided that we were not going to cross the pass that day. That's living in Wyoming. But
Yep.
what constitutes a long drive changes a little bit out west. Nothing is, you're an hour and a half from the nearest interstate where I'm at, and there's no towns that I would say are close. Everything's pretty spread out. So even high school sports. Well, my daughter's not in high school yet, but she's a figure skater, so we do a few out of town trips. And yeah, when you're going 3-4 hours, 5 hours to go to this next competition, and your perspective on what is a long drive changes, or what is, nothing is 20 minutes away from you in this place. But the drive is pretty. Even the drive that everybody hates from here to Casper is really not that bad compared to cornfields far as the eye could see for hour after hour after hour. So the perspective of how far you can see changes out here. It's not on a clear day. If you get up high, as you know, 50 or 100 miles away, you can find a landmark, and it's huge. It's awe inspiring, but yeah, it makes even something as a simple car drive in the wintertime is more interesting because of the stuff you have to look at.
I don't know if it's, when you were talking about driving to Casper, I don't know if it's a drive to Casper or if it's Casper itself,
Oh, I hate
because
Casper
it's the
itself.
windiest place in Wyoming.
That's big city compared to Cody. I don't like big cities anymore.
I know. And I'm just kidding there, but yeah, because we're going to actually, on the Valentine's, we're going over. My stepdaughter has never went through the elk refuge at Jackson,
Oh,
so that's
cool.
where we're going.
Yeah.
And I just love taking pictures of wildlife and whatever else we can see. So that'll be a fun weekend to go. We go to Thermopolis to sit in the springs,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a lot of things to do. But I just want to say, it takes a little bit for somebody to chase their dreams,
Mhm.
somebody to uh, be uncomfortable, and for you to decide. I'm not just saying you, I'm saying the whole family,
Mhm.
your wife and you, and mostly, but that takes a lot of guts that some people just do not have, and I commend you for that. You told me a little bit earlier about what built up to it, but was there ever a deciding factor, that one thing that said, you know what, we need to move?
Not not one deciding factor. I will say politics started the conversation. Minnesota, as I said, not a business friendly, not a gun friendly state. So I was kind of always, in all my years of business there, concerned that I was a Senate vote or two away from, having a bad time with new laws, which after I left,
Yeah.
they managed to pass most of those laws. It started the
Yep.
conversation, but that by no means it wasn't one thing in particular.
Yeah.
It was a buildup of. I'll say that, yes, there was a big risk. Obviously, you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know if it's going to colossally flop. I mean, when the first year my wife and I were married, we tried a move that didn't last more than a few months. It turned out I'm not a
Yep.
fan of the South. It's too hot and humid down there. But you miss. Say what's the saying? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So if you don't
Yep.
try it, you're never going to know. So it wasn't one thing, but it was a buildup, and then once I've had lots of friends who will tell me after I moved and after we got settled in here, they're like, man, I'm really jealous. My wife would never agree to doing that. So I realized, hey, I'm pretty lucky. My wife agreed, and what didn't just agree for a
Mm-hmm.
moment, she committed to it too. That's a huge factor in making this work. But it once we were talking about it, and I said, all right, we're not gonna move that far without at least visiting a few of these places. So we took a road trip, and it didn't stifle any of that desire to move. In fact, it made it way stronger. And I would say our largest regret from doing this is probably should have done it years sooner. And I think you made the right
Yeah.
decision when that's your rear view mirror look is I wish I would have done it sooner. We've absolutely totally committed, loved the choice of doing it. We just kind of wish we would have done it sooner. So
Well, and then also the Don't Die Rusty, chasing your dreams. It just feels good to see people that chase their dreams and then they become successful in
mhm.
chasing their dreams. And
Mhm.
and you're telling me that the job is good, and you're telling me that the move is good.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's the best part about the whole thing, is when you take that chance and you make that step, and then it works out well.
All right. No, housing would have been cheaper had we done it a few years. I would say that's the that's the one stifling factor to moving to Cody.
Why,
Um, it's not
I hear
Jackson
you
yet,
there.
but we'll just say it's not gotten cheaper since we initially started to look versus when we actually made our move. But if that's the worst of it, then I still count that as a success, because you're in a place where everybody else wants to be if the housing prices go up, right? So, and I learned this after I moved here. I said it earlier too. It's a place that most people are here because they want to be here. So you
Yep.
you just have a measure of you know everybody's happy, or not all the time. Obviously, none of that's this is broad brush strokes when I'm painting this, but you feel like you
Oh
moved
yeah.
you moved to a vacation town because it did, but
Hmm.
they have the town is set up to bring the community together a lot. There's a lot of community activities even in the off season, when obviously 4th of July is our biggest of the year, which initially scared me.
Yep.
Funny small story. um, I hate crowds. Why I moved to the least populated state in the nation, on purpose. So everybody said,
Yeah.
"Oh, the 4th of July parade, that's the busiest time of the year in Cody. That's the busiest time in the town." So I stayed away from it the first year we were here. We came into town middle of the day after the parade was over. My wife still has not forgiven me for not going or not letting her go to the parade, where Rip from Yellowstone was the MC, and I stayed home. So she's, but then you realize that busy for Cody and busy for a person from Minnesota our scales are different. It's not scary. There's a lot of people in town for about an hour, and then they all go away.
Yep.
But there's they shut down Main Street for Halloween for the kids to go trick or treating, and they shut down Main Street. There's a Christmas parade where it almost feels like you moved into a Hallmark town. You feel like you've stepped back into a sense of Americana here that was being lost in the rest of our country, and it's hugely refreshing to see people that you almost feel like you moved back in time. Not really, but kind of. People have good attitudes. People are, being patriotic is not something that people look down upon here, and kids have values. Kids have respect that we were losing in other parts of the country, and it was a giant refreshing reset to be able to move here and have it work out. So we've enjoyed it a lot.
We went over to take pictures of sheep, and it was just after Christmas and before we had a long weekend, and we were going over. I can't remember if New Year's was on the Monday, Tuesday, or whatever. But we went over, and we're driving into Basin,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the lights across the road, like you're coming in, like you'd see in some Hallmark Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you drive in, and the lights are all across the road, and to tell you the truth, and some of our listeners might laugh, but Cindy and I had to do that twice because it just felt like it just filled you up because it was cool. You don't see that a lot in places.
Right.
Like the lights were all on, and then we drove by. You drive by the courthouse there, and the nativity scene was all up, and they had other lights on. And then that year, it was just cold, and I went up, and I got actually that sheep picture right there. I
Mm-hmm.
took up there that year, and I'm taking pictures, and of course, there's other photographers up there taking pictures
Right.
too. And I ended up going to Rocky Mountain in there looking around discount,
Mm-hmm.
the Rocky Mountain store.
Yep.
And I saw the photographer that was beside me taking pictures, and we had a conversation about photography. And it's not like it was a competition. It was like we're taking in the beauty and the animals that are around there. And like I said, there's no competition.
Right.
It's like what f stop were you in, or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about lenses, and we talked about cameras, and those are the things that when you talk about camaraderie of a town, and like you were just talking earlier, those are the things that makes it real cool, because I didn't know him from Adam, he didn't
Mm-hmm.
know me from Adam, but if you bump into each other, you might say, I remember that face. You might not remember my name. I know
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't unless I talked to you 10 times, but I know I talked to you. And that's the cool thing about going to these places and living in those places.
Right. No, I was
So,
obviously growing up in the land of 10,000 lakes. I liked to fish, but I'd kind of lost I hadn't done it enough in the last few years, just because I let my life get busy in Minnesota, working a full time job, having a shop at home, always feeling like you're working. And that was part of another, box to check on moving is, while my kids are still young enough, I want to be known as the dad that was home and that was around, not the dad that was always working. So we rearranged a few of the priorities when we moved out here, so we could do stuff like that. But I got back into fishing a little more because fishing out west is different than fishing in Minnesota. But I remember the
mhm.
things about fishing on a lake in Minnesota that would irritate me, and one of those is the fact that feel like you're shoulder to shoulder with people all the time. there's 10 times more people in Minnesota than there are here. So you feel like the first time I encountered another person fishing on the river, and they were over 50 yards away from me, and they came all the way over to ask me, "Do you mind if I fish this pool right above you?" And I was kind of flabbergasted, like, what? Somebody's going to ask me if they can fish 50 yards? I can't hit you with a cast. What? You're not in any. But people are polite. They don't do that. I mean, they want to make sure it's okay before they are anywhere. The politeness factor and we'll just say when you're hunting, you can kind of tell whether the person that you encounter on the trail is from a western state or is from an eastern state by how close they are willing to stand to you. I've only ever really had one negative encounter so far hunting out here where I got irritated, and it got under my skin at first. Buddy of mine and I were hunting, going up a mountain, and I can see lights coming up behind us. So I knew there were going to be other. Most of our areas out here that I hunt are no wheeled access, so you either have horses or you're on foot. And I can see these guys; they're coming up the trail behind us, and so I thought, and I looked at their license plates in the parking lot. You always do. They were from a nameless Midwestern state, but my buddy and I, we camped on or parked ourselves on the rim, looking down at a drainage, and well, let's just let these guys walk by us. They'll go further up, the trail, and we'll have this drainage to ourselves to look at. And much to my annoyance, they sat less than 200 yards away, decided to glass the same drainage we were because, something might be there, right? I realized, there's not a lot of public land space in most of those states anymore. So that was probably totally normal to them to be around other people while you're hunting versus anyone who's from a Western state, a large Western state, they'll keep on moving because there's millions of acres. They don't need to step on your toes. And I got annoyed at first, but later in the day, I realized they probably, these guys were in their 60s. They probably saved for many years to go on a trip of a lifetime, or maybe not. I don't know. But that was just a Tuesday for me in October to be able to do that. And I went, I'm lucky, and I can share that too. So I moved off. We found another drainage to go hunt. We went and chased deer somewhere else. The fact that the two grizzlies moved into that drainage made us decide it was going to be somebody else's drainage for the day. So I'm never going to compete with the bear for hunting territory. So I'm just going to let them be. But you got to remind yourself that there's what is normal to me now is not normal for people to be able to see that stuff. And you'll find a lot of people out here they're willing to give help. They're willing to give advice if you want it. They'll tell you, hey, there's a huge buck down there and I don't have a tag for it. And why don't you go see if you can kill it? Or, there's not even hunting, when you're hiking, when you're fishing, hey, I just did really well on that pool. I bet you there's more fish in there. Or, there's a band of sheep over that hill if you want to go see them. People are real friendly and accommodating, and I didn't think I'd figure it out this fast. But there's a difference. You can tell local from tourists. A lot of people are annoyed by tourists. I remember I was a tourist once too. So as long as you can remind yourself of that every now and then, you might make that person's day by telling them, hey, there's 30 sheep over that hill. Let's go take a look at them because they love that bit of advice. Or there's something really cool if you take this trail up here. Or there's a bear up there. You probably don't want to take that trip up there. But it's not something you see in a lot of areas of the country, and people are genuine. It just makes you believe a little more in humanity. The longer I'm here, it's still pretty cool to see. So, I make the joke all summer long because you learn to license plate spot when you live in a vacation town. It's just what you do. So you realize that certain states, people are just always in a hurry. If you visit that state, you probably understand why. I came from one. Everybody's in a hurry in Minnesota. And I've made the joke for a while that, what are you late for vacation? And it's kind of true, but I've done it too. You set a schedule for yourself, not really realizing what's out there. And if you just take that moment to slow down and let that guy pass you, you've driven through Yellowstone. There are those people that are just, they're pedal down to get to the other side, and they're going to miss a lot by doing that. But don't let it ruin your day too. That's not always as easy as said than done. It's a place that a lot of people want to check off the box that they've been there. You can be here for years and years and years and never see all of it. So figure out what you want to see. I love taking friends of ours that come through. I love telling them where to go or showing them those places. Sometimes I play tour guide all the time. A lot of them want to see the places that this is the tourist attraction. It's cool. Everybody wants to go to Grand Prismatic at least once, and it's beautiful. I'll tell you to do it too, but it's crowded. But there's so many places that you can see that are off the beaten path that, you might be able to search it out on the internet if you're savvy, but a lot of people just don't know where that's at. There's some amazing stuff that you won't see another soul at for a long time if if you're willing to put the miles in on your feet anyways. So
Exactly, and I had a conversation that's coming out this week with Paul Lind, and we were talking about like the national parks, and he lives in Idaho, and we were talking about there's a lot of public land that is just about as beautiful as the national parks that nobody ever really goes and sees because it's not that spot on the map that everybody thinks they need to go see, and we're lucky to be able to go see these places. To me, it just, like I said, it's inspiring that you've done, we've talked earlier, but it's inspiring to see that it feels like to me that you're living your best life right now. You're just getting to chase these things and have success, have the close knit family, adventures, and that is just interesting to me. That some people, like I said, some people just get stuck in being content, and I'm so happy that you get to live your best life in that manner. And I'm not knocking people that that think they have to stay where they're at, but it's just one of those things. I'm happy for you.
well, thank you.
Um,
I love it.
yeah,
I'll just, bit of advice for anyone that wants to try something. You go back to it. That other guy, it didn't work out for him, and it may not, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Take a chance, and maybe your thing isn't your risk isn't packing up and moving cross country. It was mine. Didn't realize until I drove out here just how much I love the mountains and how much I'd love to be out here. Get out there, do something, be active. Whatever your challenge is, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you push yourself just a little harder sometimes. Making a cross-country move was by no means a super easy or fun thing. It was an adventure. There were parts of it that were a giant adventure. But if you don't step out and try it, then you'll always wonder, hey, what would have happened had I tried that? Would it have worked? And there are other decisions I made in life that I can look back and think that, I nearly moved to Alaska when I was just getting out of college, but I hadn't started dating my wife, but we were good friends and it was kind of heading in that direction. So I was abundantly happy I chose not to move to Alaska at that point in time in my life because, she's not an Alaska girl. She loves Wyoming, but she's, Alaska's just a step above for winter time than she wants to put up with. But it was a challenge. It was a jump out. It was uncomfortable at times. Obviously moving away from where everybody to moving to someplace where you really know nobody. But it worked. And it can work for you too if you want. And give it a try. See some country. Go drive around. See some things. Your life is too short to live it all in one place. Even if it's not moving. Even if it's taking that trip that you were thinking about or hemming and on about. You're not gonna. You can't take it with you. That's another another cliche phrase. You can't take it with you, but you can experience it while you're here and get out and do something.
I agree with you, and I there's two things that I agree with you with because you can take that chance, and at that one move might be the wrong place at the wrong time, and it just doesn't fit.
Right.
But who knows if the next chance you take isn't the right fit?
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is, I have to agree with you. It takes a while, and it would take me a while to get used. I just went up to Alaska. My stepson lives in Alaska and Wasilla,
Mm-hmm.
and I was up there for Christmas. And I will agree with you, it would take a long time for me to get used to the winters there
Mm-hmm.
in the aspect of the sunlight because I was there. It was cloudy. I think we had maybe a one partial day of sun that came through for the minimum hours that were there. And I was tired all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
I try to be upbeat and I try to find the things, but it was tough.
Right.
And when we flew out of Anchorage to come back to South Dakota, there's a girl that her husband was stationed up in the base up there, and they were moving now to Tennessee, and she said, I've been up here 3 years, and every time the winter came, I just couldn't find the energy because of the darkness
Right.
and the weather. And some people it's like that. I mean, I always thought like you I'd wake up in the morning and have energy all the time, but it just kind of starts dragging it out of you
Mm-hmm.
just a little bit with the sunlight part. So I would have to agree there.
Yeah.
So
I like the
well,
sun. I
I do
like the
too.
sun.
so so anyway, I'm going to thank you for giving us a tour of your life of moving and taking chances, and because I do believe you're the don't die rusty person because you have chased your dreams, your family, you take your family out and go on adventures, and you get to live the best life, and
Mm-hmm.
you get to share it with so many people. And I just want to thank you because I thought, you know what, you've commented on our stuff, and we've kind of had a few conversations, and
Mm-hmm.
then you knew Ricky, so I just want to thank you. But I'm going to, of course, you know what's coming up. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm going to ask you that one last big question.
Sure.
What's the good life to Matthew Fry?
Getting out there and seeing stuff and not dying rusty.
Well, I like to hear that because when we started Don't Die Rusty, I thought about Don't Die Rusty. I just want to wear out. I don't want to rust out, and I want to
Right.
live the best life I can. And then if we can talk people into looking at it that way, then that would be maybe we're doing something good for the world. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just want to thank you again, and this has been a fun time. If, unless you have anything
Well,
else that you can give any advice to anybody, that I'll just let you go. I know I take an hour of your day on a Sunday, and I thank you so much for
no
that.
problem. Thanks for the opportunity. This was a fun conversation, and I hope it helps somebody. Take the chance. Sometimes you're dragging yourself to get started. I can't say that it's always the easiest conversation to drag children out on a hike when they would rather, sit there and do nothing. Or sometimes myself, I don't feel like moving that day. But when you
Yeah,
get out there was one specific quick story I'll finish up with.
yeah,
Last summer, my wife said on a Sunday afternoon, let's go hike Clark's Fork Canyon to Bridalveil Falls. We had never done it. She'd heard it was pretty. She's like, man, I just don't know that I want to go out today. And the kids were I said, no, let's push it. Let's do it. It was a little warm, but Clark's Fork kind of bakes in the sun in the summertime. So, but let's do it. And it's not the friendliest trail on foot. It's a little hard on the knees and ankles and stuff, but we pushed it. We did it. Despite her stepping on a snake, she did not die of a heart attack. When you climb up to the base of the falls and you turn around and you realize that you are a small, insignificant part, but you feel alive. We got back to the car dead tired after that one. but everybody was so happy that they went and did it. It was an absolutely gorgeous spot to sit and just take in that God created this, and I'm a small part of it, but I get to be part of it. You come back feeling tired but refreshed all at the same time. Push yourself even when you don't feel like it.
Well, I like feeling alive. That is a Don't Die Rusty thing there too, because we feel that's what it is. It's about feeling alive within yourself. And if we can make people feel alive, maybe the world turns just a little bit better, you know. So thank you so much. I loved the conversation, and I'll just let you go now. So I'm going to say, don't die rusty nation. Keep chasing your dreams, being the best you, and of course, don't die rusty. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Don't Die Rusty podcast with your hosts, Rick Hanson and Ricky Bruley. The Don't Die Rusty podcast is written and produced by Rick Hanson and Ricky Bruley. You can find us on Instagram and on Facebook at Don't Die Rusty. You can rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You might find your review read on a future episode. Got a question for the Ricks? Send us an email at don'tdierusty@gmail.com. It too could be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Don't Die Rusty podcast wherever fine podcasts are downloaded.